Father God, we come to you today. We just praise your name. We thank you, Father, for this day and the beautiful day that we've had. We thank you for the city. We thank you, Father, for this country. And we just pray that we can make decisions based on your teachings. Father, we just thank you for Jesus and what he means to us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Mr. Parker, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. I will call this meeting to order since we have a quorum. We will go ahead. We already received visitors for the public hearing. Do we have any other comments to make? Okay. We will go right to the agenda. Item number 1, approval of minutes for the council meeting December 12th, 2022. I assume you guys have all reviewed those minutes. Do you have any additions or subtractions?
Make a motion we approve those minutes.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. We approve the minutes. Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Item number 2, consider resolution R-787-0123, authorizing the participation in the South Plains Regional Mutual Aid Agreement and designating the city's chief representative. Ramon, do you want to update us on that?
Yes, sir. So like it says, this resolution authorizes the city to participate on a mutual aid agreement with the South Plains Regional area. So in the event of a disaster or a civil emergency, this agreement will allow the city to render or receive aid from the surrounding communities and entities. It also names the mayor as the city's chief representative in all matters pertaining to the city's participation in this agreement. This is just a renewal. We've been part of this agreement for many years. Fortunately, I think about the only thing I can remember is wildfires, but in the case of an emergency, then we'll all help each other, all the communities around us. So that's what it does.
All right. Well, I move that we adopt this resolution. Hear a second?
Second.
it's been moved and seconded that we adopt this resolution. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, item number 2 passes. Item number 3, consider interlocal contract with SPAG for grant administrative services for TDHCA, home grant contract, number 1003226. I'll let Ramon explain that.
Thank you. In the previous council meeting, the council awarded a contract for the administrator of the new home grant program to SPAG. What this does, he actually allows the council and the city to go into contract with SPAG to provide the services. After reviewing that contract, staff recommends that the city to contract with SPAG to provide administrative services for the TDHCA home grant contract number 1003226. This is an actual formality. We will actually go in contract with SPAG.
Have we not done this in the past?
What's that?
A contract?
We do a contract on each program. So yes,
Okay.
our current home grant, we have a contract with public management. This one will be with SPAG to administer the new home program.
Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion, we enter into that contract with SPAG.
Do I hear a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second that we enter that contract with SPAG. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay. Item number 3 passes. Item number 4, receive investment report and financial statement for the month ending December 31st, 2022. Come on.
We need everybody receive a copy of that. If there's any questions, concerns, let us know. And this is a monthly statement that we provide to y'all. So if there's any questions, we're more than glad to answer them. I can assure you that's been looked at more than once. So I find nothing wrong with it, but that's my opinion anyway. But no, it is a monthly deal. We actually have a good system in place. Santa does a good job of keeping up with that. So I have reviewed that financial statement.
I move that we receive that investment report review. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion and a second has been made. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? And item number 3 passes. Item number 4 passes. Item number 5, presentation of the city plan for CDBG planning grant number 7220084. Ken?
Thank you. Yeah, that's me. There you go.
If you recall, it's been up over a year when we started this planning grant. Public management, again, have been working on it. He's going to present the findings. He's going to hit the highlights. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask and any suggestions. One of the things that we would adopt is later we
Accept it.
accept it.
Yeah.
Accept it. Yes.
So we'll go through it tonight, and then one thing we'll have to do per TDA guidelines is we'll have to have a final public hearing, and then at that final public hearing, we do a resolution accepting the plan, and we send it to the state for them to review. So we don't get paid till TDA says it meets all the contract, and you guys are okay with it. So
what will we be required? Is this an action item?
not tonight. Not tonight.
This is just receiving the presentation.
Yeah, and then you have time to go through it and all that kind of stuff. So what is this planning document? So it's a series of maps, sections. The sections are financial analysis, which is just kind of, okay, what is your borrowing capacity? Because we're going to list a lot of projects in here, from, streets and water and sewer and drainage, those kind of things. We're also going to talk about housing and population and land use. Some of the maps, Ramon's staff's been great helping us with the map system. Some of them we created on our own. We went around and counted all the houses in town. Good, bad, ugly, vacant, manufactured homes, multifamily structures, and so one of the maps I'll show you is that. We also did an analysis on kind of where you're at with your housing. We also looked at population based on the housing count, how many we think people are here now, and how many we think will be here in the next 15 years or so. Land use, also looked at, like I said, the water and the sewer and the drainage systems, and Ramon staff was able to help me with some recommendations. So, streets, we're going to look at not only the seal coating, but we have some recommendations on some that are still not paved that you probably should look at in the future, bond issue or something, getting those completely done. But once again, in the document, even though we've got cost estimates in the water, sewer, streets, and drainage, no one's holding your feet to the fire on it. This is a planning document for not only this council, but the councils in the future. So this is what you guys had thought was what we needed to get accomplished moving forward. And so typically it gets picked up by the next council and they start going after these projects that are listed, which can also be done. It helps you when you're thinking about what grants to go after. Streets can be done, water and sewer improvements and those kind of things. So we talk about funding sources as well. So the first map is just your base map. And what I want to point out here, of course, this is all your lot lines, your parks and things like that. But are you guys familiar with the extraterritorial jurisdiction term, ETJ? We all heard of that before?
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Let me tell you the main function of this and why it was created in the first place. You're over 5,000 population, you get a mile. And since no other big cities are around Wilshire, you get your full mile. Because when we move over toward the Metroplex, some of those cities do not have ETJ because they're all on top of one another, right? But out here, you got plenty of room. What it's for is for two things: subdivision regulations and annexations. Okay? Your home rule, right? Okay. Annexations have become they're very difficult now. The Texas legislature continues to strengthen and makes it harder for any community to do annexation. Especially you guys, general law cities, the only way they're annexing is through somebody is voluntarily wanting to be annexed. When you guys do have annexation powers, but typically you have to come up with a full annexation plan, which spells out we're going to make these improvements and these improvements within the next 5 years when you're bringing that piece of property in. Where the ETJ comes into play, you can't annex anybody unless they're contingent to your city limit line and they're within your ETJ. Okay? So that's one of the reasons that this law, or the purpose of the ETJ, it hadn't been around for, I think, the 80s is when this came about. Now, here's the other thing. Subdivision regulations is one of the only ordinances and regulations that a municipality can enforce outside its city limits. And the reason it's there is because you don't want somebody to come in right here and they come in and develop this property and it's just outside your city limits. And they put in real small water lines, they put in real small sewer lines, they don't have any kind of drainage easements or detention ponds or retention or no plan at all, and they put in really narrow streets. And then they put that in, it's all done, it went through the county subdivision regulations, which are typically not very strong, okay? Cities' subdivision regulations are strong, and part of this plan, we've given you guys a draft subdivision regulations that will have some of these things in there. What happens 5 years down the road, somehow this guy comes to the city and goes, hey, why don't you annex us? And the city says, okay. And the minute you do that, all those inferior streets and water and sewer lines are now your problem. So, what happens is, if you've got subdivision regulations and someone develops outside your city limits, but inside the ETJ, they come to you, not the county. They go by your regulations. which will dictate nice wide streets, 6-inch lines, fire protection, and sewer is correct, and someone has had to look at the drainage to make sure they're not, whatever they develop out there is not going to come into the city and cause more drainage problems for you. Okay? There are 2 ordinances that even though you're accepting the plan later in this process, you're not adopting those ordinances, which one is zoning and one is subdivision regulation. We've drafted draft ordinances for you, but you can, the TDA does not require you to adopt. So you can come back later and look at that. But you don't have zoning, you do have zoning right now. Okay. And so like I said, I draft them for cities, but I'm not the zoning salesman. Some cities like it, some cities, they don't want to do it. I would tell you this about zoning, the main complaint I get, some cities, Ken, what can I do? Because so-and-so wants to put this is the middle of a neighborhood and this guy wants to put in a gas station right in the middle of the neighborhood. What can I do without a zoning ordinance? Nothing. That's going to be the only tool that would, other than the town rises up and says, we're not going to let you do this. But, so anyway, just keep that in mind. Zoning was brought about a long, long time ago just to keep unwanted uses, mainly to keep unwanted smokestack uses out of neighborhoods, right? It was there mostly to protect the single family use. However, you know how it is, people don't want to be told what they can and cannot do with their property. So I understand all of that. So I'm just letting you know what it's there for. All right, so let's get into the structure map real quick. Let me get in here. Now, all these greens over here in this area, the round, you're still having a hard time seeing that. And we can send y'all PDFs of all these. I think Ramon, if you don't have them, I'll send you another set. And then all the greens are good. It's a real, my guys went around and they took their map, now they've got GPS, they've got little, and they're doing it on their phones now. When I first started this, we'd take out a giant map and go around and mark stuff on the map. Now they just go around with their phone and then, anyway, each dot locates either a house, a regular single-family standard house, or a manufactured home, or a business, or a multifamily, whether it's an apartment or a duplex, whatever it may be. And so the symbols would be over here. You got multifamily is the little plus sign, standard, deteriorated, dilapidated. Dilapidated are the red. Those are the ones that have gone kind of beyond, over the edge. Deteriorated is where maybe you're missing siding and your roof, maybe, you're starting to get to a point where deteriorated is going to become dilapidated if it isn't taken care of or it isn't repaired. Commercial structures are the diamonds. Single family homes we've got standard, deteriorated, dilapidated as well, but we've also, if they've got a dot in them, then those guys are the ones that are, the ones with the dots on all of these categories are the ones that are vacant. Or when we went by there, it really looked vacant, is what we're saying. Now, it's based on my guys driving around and looking at all of the structures in the city. Okay? So what does this do? What can it do for you? It can help your code enforcement say, okay, we know we've got a lot of reds in a certain area, and we can concentrate our efforts in those areas. You see these, and you got some reds up in here and some reds down in here, and that may be just an invitation to say, hey, let's go let's go check that area out and see what else we got. So that's with the structures now. And so this, I'm going to come through the report a little bit here. And I'll show you. All right, based on that map, this right here, table 2.1, inventory, that's kind of an inventory of what when we went around the results of the field survey. There's also data in here that came from census data. Now, if you're like me, I'm not always really 100% sure of census data these days. And I would also, but on the other hand, I can't do anything about it because it's required to be in there. So, and it's in all, as you know, this census was done in 2020. And everybody knows the issues that were going on there. We think a lot of it was underreported for the state. I think a lot of people were just not, just because of immigration and COVID itself, we don't think they're gonna really get very good data. Of course, we did our count after that, but the point is, since the data is gonna come out and we're gonna have to live with it for certain grants and applications and things, and that's just no way around that. But this report, these structures are gonna tell us, we based our current population on the occupied units based on number of persons per household. And so that's how we're going to come up with the population data, your existing population data. All right, now I did use some census data here because I have to. Now I'm on page 20 because I know it's probably easier to see there, but the age of housing units, and the reason I do this is because this is a big number here. About 77% of the housing stock was built before 1980. It's a big number, and because 1980 is what, 20, 40 something years ago now. All right. So the point is, there's a lot of units. There's not very many new units when you look at the overall housing stock of the community.
1980 was just the other day.
Just the other day, right. And, well, mine was built in 04, and my wife told me, Ken, that's like almost 20 years now. I said, okay. Which means all these things start to happen to your house after, right? Even if you built one, you got one, and it's 10 years old already, all the stuff inside starts to break down, AC, refrigerator, all that stuff. But all the stuff on the outside starts to, the siding, the roof, and all that stuff. So if it's not taken care of, then it can, like we mentioned earlier, can turn from a deteriorated, standard deteriorated, and then next thing you know it's dilapidated, and next thing you know it's now vacant. Somebody's just left it, it's now a tax trust property, those kind of things. And also, typically the older homes are not going to be up to ADA standard, right? They're going to be built with, they're not going to have the wide hallways, they're not going to have the wide doors, those kind of things. And then there's a lot of households that have at least somebody in the house that's over 65, and they may or may not need, ADA accessibility. The point is, the older the homes, they're typically not going to have those standards in there. The doors are not going to be as wide as they are now. I did mention this because Ramon let me look at this. Park Hill performed a feasibility study because the availability of affordable housing is something that's going to be. You guys have been doing home projects, and that is one of the only programs we know of that will actually take a house and reconstruct it into a new home. Unfortunately, there's a lot of issues with ownership and those kind of things because it is an owner-occupied program. There's not, that I know of, a program where they're helping renters and those kind of things. We do know there's USDA, right? They do weatherization, things like that. Sometimes you'll have Section 8, but they're developing an entire apartment complex, things like that, right? So I'm still recommending you guys stick with the rehabilitation. We talked about building inspector and code enforcement, but I'm going to get down. So here's the needs that we identified, which is, as I mentioned, the aged housing stock, dilapidated and deteriorated residential structures, availability of affordable housing. That part you think we talked about, it's a concept, but it's property the city owns, and it's how can this develop into a housing development. You always have, there's certain things you got to look at, and there's certain things the city can do to facilitate that, which is basically a private-public partnership, right? And so someone's going to have to develop it if it gets developed, if that's indeed what happens. But there's also a way of how will it develop? Is it only going to be high-end houses? Or is it going to be a mixture of houses? Is it going to be some that are on the lower end, which are more affordable, and then on the back end, you may have some higher end houses. And we see this a lot, what they'll call them planned development, like the zoning ordinance will have these are some of the things the city can do on your end. Obviously, you're not going around building houses for everybody, but there's things that the city can do to facilitate, development. Like you work with developers. Hey, man, you have some that are on the lower end to help some of our people that are renting right now get out of renting and into affordable homes. So, planned development in the zoning ordinance is one way. What you do is they come to you. It's zoned as what we call planned development. they come in and they offer you how they're gonna do it. They'll show you a map of the whole thing. Sometimes they'll have like some small retail business in front, then they might have some duplexes and then some small homes, and then some of the higher end homes toward the back or wherever. But it gives y'all a chance to look at it and kind of guide what that's gonna look like, okay? So those are the things I kind of recommend in the housing section. Continue to use the home program. There is what's called a housing preservation grant. I used one, it's been a while now, but it was also only able to repair homes. I wasn't able to do, I think we were able to spend about 25 grand per home. It's been a while since I used that program. And of course, there's Section 504, in weatherization programs, those kind of things. That was goal 1, is basically improving, your current stock. And goal 2 is increasing the stock of affordable housing. Goal 3 is continue with your building codes, and goal 4 is your code enforcement. Those two are separate. Building codes does all the electrical and the plumbing and all that stuff. And the other one is the wind and debris and those kind of things. All right, so population. I've got some charts and stuff in here, and you guys can look through that. But what I wanted to come to here is, this is where I came up with your existing population. The 2020 census said that you had 1,619 occupied, and then when we did our survey, we counted 1,832 occupied. So that means just between when they did the census and then we did our count, you're showing about 213 more occupied units. So we calculated you guys at over 6,000 persons. And I would recommend to just be cautious with any census data that came out of 2020, because we're pretty sure there's a pretty big undercount. And so we came up with a maximum minimum on your, this will be page 34. And one of them was kind of the linear progression of your population growth from 2010 to 2021. And that's your maximum. And then the minimum is based on the Water Development Board figures for Baker County. Okay? So that's how we kind of got those figures. Also got a land use. We looked at some land use. And this is the existing map here. And these are all the pretty maps. They got all the nice colors here. You got the dark green is going to be your agriculture. The red is just commercial. Yellow is single family residential. There's other shades of multifamily, which could be anything from a big apartment, a fourplex, to a duplex. They're all multifamily, right? So the blue is public. The light green is going to be your recreational areas, okay? And then, of course, the yellow is the single family residential. And we also kind of projected what this would look like into the future. And we still have a lot of ag out in the ETJ. But we kind of, as we showed here, you kind of, when you're doing land use planning and you're doing future land use planning, you'd love to see, it doesn't always happen, but you'd love to see all the commercial along the main highway, right? And then, of course, you would back in, you have your commercial, and then you back in some other light residential, and then the single family, and then more of the other kind of residentials, the large estate, those kind of things toward that. I think this is one industrial manufacturing site down here. So that's the land use portion of this. All right. So y'all have any questions? Any questions on anything so far? Can you start over? Go ahead. Huh? Can you start over? Yeah. No, but what you would use the future land use map for? Now, don't confuse it with the zoning map. There's two different things. Future land use map is what directs your zoning. If you decide that you wanted to adopt zoning later, if y'all decide, you call me and I'll walk through the process. But whatever you do, don't take it out of that book and bring it to council and adopt it, because there's a whole bunch of hearings and local government code stuff. But the point is, the future land use map, we're trying to think of what the land use might look like in 20 years. You would base your zoning map on the future land use map. Now, we wouldn't zone out that ETJ like I've done, but we would use that map to help create a zoning map. And if we were to, and I've done this in several communities, so just keep that in mind, that I've had communities that have never seen zoning and never done it before, and I've had to start from scratch. So it's kind of like you're jamming something on top of something that's never been there, and it takes a while to make it work. And I had one community that had been around for 150 years, never had zoning. They adopted it, and first year or two, there was always things where they were having to make adjustments to it and rezone stuff and things like that. That's going to happen. The minute you put that zoning ordinance on top of the city like Muleshoe that's never had before, there's going to be a lot of non-conforming uses. People call it grandfathering. It's sort of like that, not quite that. Okay? So anyway, you would have that in place, and you would make some adjustments to it as you got closer to like we really want to do this. We would really take a harder look at that future land use map. Then you would go through a process of adopting that. Then you come back and start the zoning process. Okay? All right, so streets. So once again, my guys are out there looking at streets. Very complicated. Green is good, the blue is okay, and the reds are the dilapidated streets. Most of those are gravel. The ones in red are the gravel. The street system's in pretty good shape, but Ramon tells me you guys are seal coating every year, that's kind of keeping the system in good shape, right? And so there's still some deteriorated ones, and so I'm going to get into the street plan. I'm going to give you the list. Okay. I'm going to jump ahead to page, all right, page 60. All right. So these are the ones that the guys, Ramon and the guys have told me, hey, we want to go after these. We want to seal coat these in the next, they give me a list of 4, 5, 6 years of seal coat priorities. So those streets right there that we've got listed would be the current 22, 23, right, Ramon? Yeah, okay. So these are all seal coats. What I'm doing in this first table is the seal coats, right? So we're spending about $150,000 between what you'll put aside in the budget and y'all's street maintenance sales tax, right? Which is good to keep that thing, always keep that thing around. So there's 22, 23, and then 23, 24, 24, 25, 25, 26, 26, 27. So we've gone all the way to 2027 with that thing. And so we put that on this map here. So you can see right here, here's what the colors represent. You got kind of there's an orange, and then there's a kind of reddish color, a green, a blue, and a purple. So you can kind of see, it lets you know, because you guys are all in different areas, you want to know, hey, people want to know, when is my street getting done? And through this plan, you say, here's the seal coat schedule that we've got ready to go. So it looks like what's good is you guys are kind of touching all, and this is always what you should do, touch all quadrants of the city when you're doing street repairs. That way people can see, because it's one of the biggest things that people would complain about, parks, streets. They usually don't complain about the water unless it's shut off. They don't even know that the sewer exists unless it gets backed up and they smell it in their house, right? And we all know that water and sewer are very important, but the streets, that's probably the number one complaint, right? And so it's good that it's a good strategy to always kind of be working in all 4 quadrants of the city with your seal coat program. So let me get back to the other ones that we put on table 5.2. So these guys, I've got listed on page 62. We've got Railroad, North Railroad, Ithaca, Birch, West Chicago, East Avenue D, East 3rd, West Ash, Boston Fir, East and West Boston, and then Joliet, and then 8. All right, so I know it's a big number. You're looking at $1 million and 50, right? So there's 2 ways to handle this, right? You could put all this together in a CO package, certificate of obligation or bond package. Typically, if you're telling residents that you're doing streets, they tend to go along with that. CO you can do, that doesn't require you to do. It doesn't require you to do an election on it, right? But the point is, you don't have to take all these at once. You can take half of it, however y'all, it's up to y'all. The list is just there, like I said. If it doesn't get done in this planning period, it can be moved over. But these are streets that are going to have to be taken down, scraped all the way down, built up the base, new asphalt on top. So we're not talking about steel coating, this is talking about basically reconstruction slash reclaim, okay? So, and once again, the stuff that's in here, I'm not committing you to any dollars with this plan. It's just, these are things that we're seeing as based on, what we see and what staff has seen, recommendations, okay? Okay, so that's streets. We get to, we'll go into water. And now most of this, I didn't do an inventory on water. Obviously, this came from you guys. But you got like 20 wells out here. So one thing we did discuss is you're good on wells for a while, okay? So that's good. So some of the things that we did look at, these are all in the report itself. You'll see all the facilities, all the wells are listed, the water storage with the elevator tanks and the ground storage. So we looked at that. We looked at what your demands are for the future. And then how many connections you might need, how much storage you might need, those kind of things. And so I will get over to list and rank the problems. It's going to be basically replacing old small water lines throughout the system, meaning when we've got lines that need to be upgraded to 6 inches, we can get hydrants on them, those kind of things. And then installing smart meters throughout the system, which would be more of a long-term thing. Some cities are using their grant funds to do that, so just something to think about. It's a citywide project. They're putting in these smart meters. There's a couple of levels of smart meters from what I believe. I think some of them they'll just, you don't even have to go out, right, on some of them?
There's some fixed, there's some fixed bays.
Yeah, and then some of them where they go out, but it's almost, time's cut in half, right? Yeah. But it's pulling it right off of there, right? Yeah. So they're not getting out and reading, not walking out and reading every one of them. There's something on there, on the top of the meter that will let them report it. Now, if you really want to get fancy, I believe they do it, it's automated, right? And then it comes back to y'all. But that, obviously, that one's more expensive. So those are the things that we got in the water. Some of those small distribution lines that I'll show you, but some of these are, we kind of broke them up to where I know it's a little fuzzy there, but they're put in phases so that each one of them could be, you could use it to do a grant application. So we kind of split them up to where it'd be real easy to pick this one out. Hey, this is one we want to go after, let's go after. Okay, so that's what this plan will help you do. You're ready to do a community development block grant application. What do we want to do? You look back here, look at your plan. We want to do streets, water, sewer, and you go for it. So I'll go into, and that would be this map here. This is the street improvement map. I'm sorry, the water improvement map. No, so we'll go to wastewater. Okay. So here's a yellow, black, blue, and orange. These are the phases that I just talked about. So you can see where they're at on the map here to show you kind of where these locations are. Okay. So you can kind of see. Once again, those are replacing older, smaller lines, upgrading to 6-inch lines, get water hydrants on them. Fire hydrants on them. Okay. Okay, wastewater. That's the funnest one, right? The guys really didn't have a lot other than replacing some older collection lines and manholes. And there was a couple of phases on that, and then some wastewater treatment plant improvements. So they're telling me the system is really in pretty good shape. So we did, there's a couple of phases here that I just mentioned, green and here, for replacing some lines that have probably collapsed or whether it's clay lines or I don't know if they're not up to date. And then of course improvements at the plant, which would be more of a long-term thing. And the drainage, once again, we looked at the drainage, but what I did is tie in the drainage to those, because they're mentioning some of the areas, but tying in the drainage to, if you go out for a bond on those streets, that would be the time to get ditches graded, those kind of things, and put that into the bond or the CO. Okay? All right. I think I got there as quick as I could. y'all have, I know we just got this deal, and I think, Ramon's gonna spend some time with you and go over it again, and so whenever he tells me y'all are ready, we'll do a final public hearing. I'll probably send Kay over here to take care of that for me, and then, and we'll do a final public hearing first. We have to have 12 days on that one, Zanette, so we have to get it in. The final public hearing on the plans is a 12-day minimum. So, and we'll get it to the paper whenever you're, Ramon, you just tell me when you're ready. But the same night, you do the hearing, and then that same night, you adopt a resolution accepting the plan. You're just accepting it, and that way we can send it over to the state, and then they will, all this will be put in TDA Go, you upload everything, and I won't get my final payment until they approve the draw, and then we go from there. All right? Okay, well, thank you for your time. Y'all have any questions right now? I know. But just remember, anything, if something comes up and get a chance to look through the whole thing, just let me know, or Ramon know, I'll make the revisions and get it back to you guys. Okay? Thank you, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it.
Okay, at this point, we will go into administrative reports. Norman, can you help us out there?
Sure. So the city held the annual Christmas luncheon on the 14th of December at the Cleaning Center. City employees donated a total of $2,632 to the Lady County Food Pantry, and also delivered approximately 1,500 meals on the Meals on Wheels program throughout the year. Every Wednesday, we do that. We rotate among departments, so we do that, approximately 1,500. Again, thank you to Lady County Electric, 5 Area, Telephone, XL Energy, and the Public Works Department, and helping taking down the Christmas decorations, the holiday decorations. And one thing that January the 18th, the first day of fall for a place on the city of Munich ballot for the May 6th election, general election. District 3 and 4 council members will be elected at this election. It will be yourself and Councilman Parker. Okay, so beginning on January the 18th, that's the first day of fall. Come see Sana, she'll take care of that. Just an update on the current home program. All 3 homes have been demolished, and we're ready to start construction here before long. So I've been waiting on this deal for the past 5 years, so I'm excited to see that happen. Anyway, so that's moving along. So, and that's all I have.
Thank you so much for that.
Yep. Y'all have a good night. It's been nice meeting you.
Thank you, Ken.
Get up and see you. Y'all have a good night.
Okay.
Thanks, you do.
Thank you. I'll be back.
Does the council have any comments?
Just a big shout out, attaboy for what city employees have done
Yes,
for the Christmas drive. I think it's tremendous.
exactly.
They're taking that extra step forward to help people out. That's a really big, good thing. And also the meal was fabulous. The Christmas luncheon.
I did vote. Good on this.
You missed a good, you missed a baby.
I did want to mention one thing here, give a shout out to the Senior Center. February the 11th, they're going to have their breakfast. It'll be a Saturday morning. They'll have breakfast. It's all by donation, and it's from 7 to 11 on February the 11th. I'm going to try to make nice with our newspaper and see if we can't get it into the newspaper this time. So you guys make note of that, and if you want to show up, it'd be appreciated. Do what? Yes, 11th of February. That is right before Valentine's Day. So, okay. Well, if there's nothing else, adjourn the meeting then. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.